Originally, tragedies tend to be viewed as overly hilarious or melodramatic. For some viewers, they merely exhibit a feeling of disinterest. At the end of a tragedy, they just sit there thinking, well, and why exactly did I watch this? Many people tend to find tragedies off-putting, because they generally use stories as escapist material. To quickly put a pause to depressing reality. With only a surface-level understanding of tragedy, you think that they pretty much do the opposite, pulling you back into the bitterness of human life. In this upcoming series, I want to take a look at various tragedies and explain their hidden messages and lessons that can be great guides for how people should act in their own life. And for the first episode, which tragedy could possibly fit better than the gigantic Shakespearean classic Romeo and Juliet? Well, the film at least. Although many people view this film as kind of all over the place, describing it like a fever dream, I actually loved this totally abstract take on the classic tale. And even though the setting is switched, the plot is basically the same. And of course, pretty much everyone knows the iconic ending of the work. Indeed, it is a bit different than the actual stage play, with the movie replacing the dagger with a handgun, yet the substance stays the same. Now, what does tragic death actually mean to the story, and how exactly can it help us in our own lives? To answer that question, we first have to look at the main protagonist, Romeo, and how his actions are responsible for the fifth and final act of the tragedy, the catastrophe, or in Greek tragedy, Exodus. Now, as the part of the piece that has to resolve dramatic tension that's been raging over the whole tragedy, it inevitably has to end with the main character realizing that his actions were all in vain. We can actually see this earlier in the tragedy, where a friend of Romeo informs him about Juliet's alleged death. His breakdown comes as an inevitable consequence. Now, with Romeo and pretty much all tragic heroes, their suicides feel earned and not forced. These deaths are only so believable to us because we see the main protagonist trying to reach his or her goal over the course of the whole tragedy. If they only had been struggling to achieve their dreams for a short period of time, the suicide would not be nearly as potent. With the death of a tragic hero, we can also take inspirations for our own lives. The themes and motifs are pretty much obvious. Always rethink your actions and do not live too recklessly. You pretty much can see how far that's brought Romeo. The tragedy of Romeo and Juliet also teaches us not to be too naive while going through life. Romeo was blinded because of his naivety towards Juliet and simultaneously towards fate. And fate is something far greater than any of us, a concept we cannot understand and maybe never will.
Nothing